It's 3:15 a.m. on the 14th of November 2025 in the South China Sea. Deep below the waves, the USS North Carolina, a Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine, is running silent near Scarborough Shoal. The control room glows red as alarms snap on and the low hum of machinery turns into sharp, urgent motion. Sonar operators lean over their screens as a brutal active ping slams through the hull again and again, proof that the Chinese destroyer Lhasa has locked on and is sweeping hard for a firing solution. One wrong move, and the USS North Carolina stops being a ghost in the dark and becomes a trapped target. 130 men riding a steel tube that could crumple in seconds under the weight of the sea. In the next few minutes, the captain must choose. Dive deeper into the cold, shifting layers that can hide the boat but crush it if something goes wrong, or hold depth and gamble that the enemy sonar loses the trail before missiles and torpedoes close in. Either way, the ocean stays silent. In the South China Sea, every ship moving through these waters carries something the world relies on: food, fuel, medicine, and the everyday goods that keep life running back in the United States. Tonight, the USS North Carolina is here for a reason. Gather covert intelligence on the Chinese flotilla near Scarborough Shoal and make sure freedom of navigation stays real, not just a line in a speech. If Beijing forces a US submarine out of this area, shipping lanes could tighten overnight. Cargo vessels would reroute thousands of extra miles, costs would jump, and delays would reach American stores and supply chains. For partners like the Philippines, a retreat would raise doubts about whether Washington can still protect the region when pressure turns heavy. Insurance would rise, and smaller economies nearby would feel the strain fast. For China, hunting the North Carolina is about control, showing that their ships decide what happens here. For the US, staying hidden and completing the mission is a quiet signal that these waters remain open. Philippine Coast Guard stations are already tracking the situation, knowing whatever unfolds here could shape their future security. In operations rooms across the region, officers follow every report, aware that one wrong move could shift plans overnight. Both sides know a single encounter here doesn't stay local. It spills into trade, alliances, and the balance of power across the Pacific. And with the enemy's active sonar closing in, every choice aboard the North Carolina matters: depth, silence, timing, all of it. If you think the US sub should hold its ground, hit 1. If you believe China's pressure will force it back, press 9 and tell us why. 3:17 a.m. The first real sign of danger hits the USS North Carolina when the sonar screen blooms with sharp echoes, multiple Chinese escort ships shifting formation and tightening their search ring. The destroyer Lhasa drives forward and sends another powerful pulse across the deep. The captain orders silent running, and the submarine's hum drops into a tight, tense quiet. The sonar team tracks a coordinated arc, 3 ships sweeping in a pattern meant to trap anything hiding below. The captain orders the first acoustic decoy fired. A burst of compressed air launches it into the dark, where it begins copying the submarine's sound signature. Moments later, a second decoy drifts into the thermal layer. These layers bend sound and confuse sonar, but diving around them is risky. Pressure rises quickly and the margin for error shrinks. "Steady," the captain says as the crew adjusts trim controls with near-surgical precision. Above, Lhasa reacts. Its search pattern tightens, chasing the decoy it believes is the submarine on the move. The shift on the sonar display proves the trick worked temporarily. The Philippine Coast Guard, monitoring from afar, radios a short, clipped update. Enemy ships accelerating, search widening. The captain calls for a controlled dive into the deeper band of the thermal layer. It's dangerous, but the deeper they go, the harder it is for the enemy to maintain a clean lock. The hull creaks softly as pressure climbs, a reminder of how thin the margin is down here. The crew speaks in low murmurs, knowing even small noises can echo farther than expected. Another sharp echo slams across the room closer this time. The enemy is tightening the net. The North Carolina deploys a third decoy and angles to starboard, sliding along the edge of the cold layer. The timing must be perfect. Too aggressive and they leave a detectable wake. Too cautious and the enemy sweep passes directly overhead. The captain keeps the submarine moving in small, controlled adjustments. Yet everyone aboard feels how narrow the gap is becoming. One slip, one misread echo, and the enemy could have them boxed in. This becomes the night's first true contest, stealth against sonar, patience against pressure, and neither side shows any sign of backing down. The pressure rises at 3:22 a.m. when the search pattern above shifts again. The Lhasa eases speed while its escorts surge forward, forming a wide triangle of overlapping sonar sweeps. To the crew of the North Carolina, the sound feels like a heavy net dragging across the deep, closer, tighter, harder to slip through. The captain stays calm, but everyone senses the change. The enemy is no longer searching blindly, they're closing the circle. A sharp sonar pulse slices across the submarine's last known track. The operator marks the bearing, his voice low. "Almost on us. No panic, just a room drawing tighter. At this depth, options shrink." One wrong movement could light up the sub's position like a beacon. The captain orders a slight turn to port, only a few degrees, enough to slide out of the center of the sweep without making noise. The submarine glides through the cold layer, using shifting temperatures to distort its signature. Another pulse washes over the hull, faint but threatening. Moments later, an escort breaks formation. Its engines spike as it drops its sensors deeper, chasing a faint return. The captain reacts instantly, ordering a small ballast change. The North Carolina sinks a few meters. The hull groans under the pressure, but the maneuver pushes them beneath the escort's search angle. The control room stays dim, lit in red. Sweat builds from tension, not heat. Every soft creak in the hull makes sailors glance at each other. A second escort sweeps wide and sends a pulse straight into the thermal layer. This one nearly pins them. The operator freezes. Close. The captain adjusts course again, trimming speed even lower. Too much speed leaves a wake. Too little and the enemy sweep rolls right over them. The submarine edges along the seabed's natural slope, using the terrain as a shield. Above, the Chinese formation tightens once more, convinced the sub is inside the shrinking circle. They're right, but not accurate enough to strike. The crew feels the weight of each second. One misread echo, one mistimed adjustment, and the enemy will have a clean lock. Yet the North Carolina remains a ghost, slipping through gaps measured in meters and moments. 3:26 a.m. Just as the North Carolina settles into its narrow pocket of safety, the sonar screen spikes with a new pattern. The Chinese ships abruptly change course fast, sharp, nothing like their earlier slow tightening maneuvers. Instead of closing the circle, they open it. For a moment, it looks like a mistake. Then, the realization hits. They've misread the decoys. But the twist deepens. The Lhasa deploys the wrong countermeasures surface skimming devices meant for fast targets, not a deep-running nuclear sub. The crew hears it instantly. The pings are all wrong, bouncing through the upper layers instead of carving into the deep. The captain and sonar chief share a quick glance. A rare gap has opened in the middle of all the chaos. It won't last long, but it's wide enough for the submarine to move if they act now. The risk is real. Several escorts are still sweeping the edges, and a single wrong move could put the sub right in their path. The captain orders a sharp dive into the cold layer, steeper than anything attempted tonight. The submarine tilts hard, the deck shifting under the crew as they brace against the angle. The hull groans from the strain, but the maneuver drags them under the confused sonar cloud forming above. The escorts try to correct, but too late. Their sensors sweep the wrong depth, locked onto echoes from their own countermeasures. The thermal layer bends the pulses, masking the North Carolina completely. For the first time all night, the enemy loses the trail. The crew stays alert. They know this kind of break is temporary. The Lhasa will adjust, and the escorts will reset their grid. When they do, the hunt will return with even more force. But for the moment, the North Carolina has room to breathe, and a narrow window to strike back before the enemy realizes what happened. 3:28 a.m. The captain knows the opening won't last. Once the Lhasa corrects its mistake, the Chinese formation will collapse back onto their trail. The North Carolina has only one option: strike first and vanish before the enemy understands what happened. In the torpedo room, 3 Mach 48 ADCAPs wait. Torpedo 1 fire. The submarine trembles as the first weapon launches and slips into the cold layer, heading straight for the destroyer's magazine. Torpedo 2 fire. The second shot angles lower, aimed at the engines. Each launch is timed seconds apart, just enough to confuse any attempt to pinpoint their origin. The sonar operator speaks quietly. Torpedo 1 acquired. Stable lock. Then, Torpedo 2 acquired. The captain doesn't hesitate. Torpedo 3 fire. The final torpedo kicks harder than the others, programmed to chase the aft section once the hull is already torn open. It's a textbook spread, measured, lethal, designed to finish the fight quickly. Above them, the enemy finally reacts. Countermeasures splash across the surface, but the wrong kind, still optimized for fast, shallow targets. Their sensors hunt ghosts, while the real threat runs silent beneath them. Impact. A second explosion follows. Sharper, cracking through layers of shifting temperature. The sonar screen flickers with jagged returns as the Loss's hull rips apart. Shockwaves ripple downward, rattling the North Carolina even at depth. Fires erupt inside the destroyer, spreading faster than the crew can respond. Then Torpedo 3 hits. The aft section buckles and folds. Power dies instantly, engines, lights, comms. The flagship breaks apart and begins its descent, scattering debris across the shoal as alarms above turn into chaos. The escorts scramble to react, but their sonar grid collapses under the noise. Every ping returns, only clutter metal shards, trapped air, collapsing bulkheads. They know something catastrophic has happened, but not where the submarine is now, or where the attack came from. Then Torpedo 3 hits. The aft section buckles and folds. Power dies instantly, engines, lights, comms. The flagship breaks apart and begins its descent, scattering debris across the shoal as alarms above turn into chaos. The sea falls silent after the Loss's destruction. Debris drifts downward, fading into the dark. The North Carolina lowers its engines and sinks deeper into the thermal layer, letting the chaos above dissolve into calm water. In the control room, there's no cheering, only quiet relief. The goal wasn't victory, but survival, and preventing the region from tilting towards something far worse. The Chinese escorts search blindly across the shoal, their formation shattered and their sensors overwhelmed by the noise of their own flagship breaking apart. Some sweep too shallow, others too wide, leaving openings large enough for the submarine to slip through. The captain chooses one of those gaps and guides the North Carolina toward deeper, safer water. With each passing minute, the enemy pings fade until they're little more than distant taps swallowed by the sea. By dawn, the submarine is far from Scarborough, shoal silent, intact, undetected. The crew is exhausted but untouched. A mission meant only for intelligence ended with the loss of one of China's most advanced warships, a result that will echo across strategy rooms from Manila to Washington. For Beijing, the sinking is a jolt. Their most capable destroyer was lost in minutes to a submarine they never located. For the US, it's proof that American undersea warfare remains sharp even under heavy pressure. And for allies, especially the Philippines, it's a reminder that the South China Sea is still contested, still volatile, shaped by encounters like this in the dark hours before sunrise. But a larger question lingers. If a single submarine strike can shift the balance this much, what happens when the next clash involves aircraft or missiles or both? The tension doesn't end here, it simply resets. If you think this outcome stabilizes the region, press 1. If you believe it only brings both sides closer to the next confrontation, hit 9 and tell us why.